Approximately 1 minute to go, folks. So get your iPads working, or computers, whichever one you're using. So.
I'm good. Why?
Yeah, sure. Throw it into the audience. It's like giving away your guitar
Should
pick.
be chargeable. It's supposed to charge there,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. It's dead.
It is?
It's been dead for weeks now.
Well,
Oh.
we've had it, it's how many years old?
It's old.
Yeah.
You want
So,
mine? I never used it.
No, I got used to like going.
Okay.
I never got one.
it should have come with yours.
Unless he bangs on the window, we're going to get started. Okay. With that, first of all, welcome everyone tonight to a special meeting of the City Commission of Monday, June the 12th. We have 5 items on our agenda for discussion. That's the only items that we have. We'll have some public comment on a couple of them before we go in. With that, let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. And Ms. Colburn, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Colbert, not Colburn. Duh. That's all right. I misspelled
He called
my
you-
own
he
name.
called you Colburn.
Okay, announcements from the interim city manager, please.
I have none this evening.
Okay. Announcements from the city clerk.
Yes, just some meetings to announce for this week, the week of June 12th. We've got the Traverse City Light and Power Board that'll be meeting on Tuesday, June 13th at 5:15 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. The Board of Zoning Appeals will meet Tuesday, June 13th also, but at 7 p.m. in the Commission Chambers. The Brown Bridge Advisory Committee is meeting this coming Thursday, which is June 15th at 7 p.m., and that'll be at the Brown Bridge Quiet Area at the trailhead that is the intersection of Brown Bridge and Wadsworth Roads. And then finally, with respect to meetings, the Downtown Development Authority Board will meet this Friday, June 16th at 9 a.m. in the Commission Chambers. We are recruiting for some different boards and committees. These are volunteer opportunities for folks to help power city government, and they include the Local Officers Compensation Commission and Human Rights Commission. Anyone interested in serving is encouraged to contact the city clerk's office. Just a couple of community updates. The Madison and Jefferson Reconstruction Project kicked off today, and that project should be completed in November of this year. And then just a reminder that the city issues a weekly e-newsletter on Fridays. It's called the Bay Brief, and it covers the latest scoop on city initiatives and programs, and people can sign up on the city website. That's all that I've got.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we have, like I said, 5 topics. If you don't mind, I'm going to move the last 2 up, and so we can get through the closed session portion, be ready to go into closed session. Item number 3, I'm going to have to recuse myself from. There's one of the firms that have been selected for consideration. I have had a relationship with in the past, so I'm going to take myself. I have no financial interest in it or anything like that, but I'm not going to deal with the perception, so we'll just take it from there. I'm going to recuse myself from participating. All right, with that, I'm going to go to number 4, and it's the item of going into closed session to consider the periodic personnel evaluation of the city attorney. She has requested that this review of her evaluation take place in closed session. So I'll be glad to entertain a motion to do so. Don't everyone jump up at once.
I'm confused. Why would we do the closed sessions before the items?
Because
Because
he's going to leave after, he's going to leave.
I'm going to
during
walk
potty,
out of here
and
at
then we're
number
gonna go
3, and I
straight.
don't feel like walking back in. I'm going to just wait for you.
All right, got it.
Okay, so just make it easy, so
Okay.
you don't have to wait.
So I'll make the motion then that the city commission enter into closed session immediately following the public comment portion of the agenda to consider the periodic personnel evaluation of city attorney Lauren Tribble-Out as requested by the city attorney and is authorized by MCL 15.268 subsection A.
Okay, need a second? You got a second. Okay, anyone want to bring up any comment on this? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Roll call.
A roll call.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert,
Yes.
and Mayor Lewis.
Yes. The other one is a consideration going into closed sessions to discuss the purchase or lease of real property, and to consider an attorney-client privilege relating therefore or thereof. Which one is it? Therefore or thereof?
Thereof.
Thereof. Be glad to entertain a motion to do that.
Just a quick comment prior
Yes.
to that, and I'm fairly uncomfortable with the topic being considered that's in the letter from our city attorney to us, and then especially to go into closed session to discuss that topic. So I'll be voting no unless there's clarification that we're only discussing the memo from the city attorney and we're not discussing the other item that was included in that email.
They're both related.
Yeah, but one is FOIA-able, the other's not. And so I don't see why we need to be in closed session to be discussing this, really.
Okay.
Because it's not purchase of property on the open market.
It could be purchase of property.
On the open market.
Right, so the OMA allows the city commission to go into closed session and discuss that until there is an option to purchase that property.
I understand that, but I guess I would encourage my colleagues to think about the optics of this, because eventually it's in the public.
Okay. We did get a motion in a
Nope,
second.
we need a motion.
No, we need a motion.
I'll
Let's-
make a motion that the city commission enter into closed session immediately following the public comment portion of the agenda to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease that real property is obtained pursuant to MCL 15.268 subsection D, and to discuss an attorney-client communication as authorized by MCL 15.26 subsection H.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Anyone else like to address this? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
No, roll call vote again. Yeah, Lisa.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Commissioner Warner?
No.
And Mayor Lewis?
Yes. Okay, with that, we're back to number one. Tonight, we have an update regarding the SARS-CoV-2 wastewater sampling grant program that was undertaken. So thank you for being here, and turn it over to you. Who you want to introduce? And I see we got it right here in front of us, so there you go.
Go ahead, Art.
Okay, thank you. So this project has been going on about 2 years, hard to believe already. And it's gone from mainly focusing on COVID-related viruses in wastewater to also looking at variants that showed up along the way as this process goes through of a pandemic. So we have Maggie Peterson here from Great Lakes Environmental Center, and Mick DeGrave as well from Environmental Center, and some other staff. And they are the busybodies that are at work every week that we've contracted with to go out in the field and collect samples at 11 sites around the city, bring them back to a lab at their place, and do all this analysis. And there's just lots and lots of data that's been generated, and it's focusing on Traverse City's collection system, but it's also a statewide project. And you'll probably get into this later. I don't need to steal her thunder. But we're participating with many other wastewater collection systems, and this data is going to the state, Michigan Department of Public Health. So I will let Maggie take over, and she's going to share some of that information with us.
Thank you, Art. And thank you all for the opportunity to give this update this evening. I'm excited to be able to share some of the data that we have. I'm Maggie Peterson. I'm the Molecular Ecology Laboratory Manager at Great Lakes Environmental Center and the technical lead for the sewer project. I'm joined here tonight by Donovan Flickinger, who's a very talented lab tech doing a lot of the bench work on this project, as well as Mick DeGrave, who is the project manager at Great Lakes Environmental Center for the sewer project. He's going to start us off with a few words before we get into the technical nitty-gritty.
And please come to the podium if you would, just for those listening elsewhere especially. Thanks.
I just wanted to thank the commissioners for allowing us to come here and tell you about this really important and wonderful project that we have been working on for 2 years. And I especially, all of our staff want to commend the people who work at the wastewater treatment plant. They were doing a lot of this type of work prior to our taking over through this grant, but without the kind of help that we got from Art and everybody that works for him, we wouldn't be here. I mean, they went above and beyond. And so that's my main message, and we are excited to continue on with this type of work. So thanks.
All right, to start out, the sewer project stands for the SARS-CoV-2 Epidemiology, Wastewater Evaluation and Reporting. There are a lot of acronyms in this project. This consists of about 20 labs that are working together in the state of Michigan, and we all work together under the umbrella of MINET, which is the Michigan Network of Environmental Health and Technology. We meet weekly to share data, methodology, and quality control issues. Most of these are academic labs, though we do have some public health partners as well as private labs and municipalities working on the project as well. And our main priority for each of the labs is to work with our local partners and to immediately disseminate the data as quickly as possible so that we can make actionable decisions based on the wastewater data that we're collecting. So in our case, of course, we're working with the city of Traverse City, closely working, as Mick said, with Jacobs Engineering and the wastewater treatment plant, and then the Grand Traverse Health Department receives the information right away as well. At the state level, we're working with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services that facilitates the project with some support from EGLE, or the Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. And then our technical lead is down at the Joan Rose Lab at Michigan State University that facilitates all of the technical aspects of the project. We also work with CDC, from which the funding originates, and they do some dissemination at their national database of the wastewater data as well. The immediate proximate goal, of course, of the sewer project is to look for COVID-19 in wastewater. This is used as a supplement to individual testing. It's a way that we can get data about large groups of people in an anonymized way, rather than having to test every individual in that group, and it can help direct public health resources, time, attention, and funding, including testing and treatment, in a way that's cost-effective and time-effective for the sampling and analysis. In Traverse City, like Art said, we have 11 sites that we're sampling. They're mapped out here. 10 of these sites are grab samples. We take them every Monday. You may see us driving around taking our samples each Monday morning. These are taken as grabs, so we're just taking a 500 ml sample, and then the influent sample is taken twice a week. This is as a composite, which means we're taking it over 24 hours, and this gives us the best temporal and geographical range. Because this gives us the broadest information, it's one of our more valuable. Yes, sir.
Okay. You want us to ask questions while we're going through this? And just
Sure.
a micro question.
Absolutely.
When you do your grab samples, do you do them at, okay, we got to go get these between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning, or is it just sometime that same day once a week?
So we start pretty well at the same time, and we follow the same route every Monday morning unless we have a holiday, and then that's usually shifted till a Tuesday. So we have fairly consistent timed grab samples, and then we track and report every time that the grab sample is specifically scooped out. So we have that tracked.
And your composite done twice a week is usually on the same day and the same time periods?
Yep, that is always 7 a.m. to 7 a.m., 24-hour composite. So Sunday to Monday morning, and then Wednesday to Thursday morning. And we usually pick that up by about 10:30 the next day.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. For these samples, we've been sampling these same 11 sites since July of 2021. So we have a lot of data coming out of these. We are looking for the presence, absence of COVID-19, as well as the amount in those positive samples. And then, as Art said, we're looking for variants of concern. Generally, we're focusing on particularly high samples to do those further testing for variants. because the kits require sufficient RNA to be able to detect those variants of concern mutations. Once we get that back to the lab, we immediately start processing. This involves concentrating our sample from about 100 mils down to less than 5. And then from there, we're extracting the RNA, which is the nucleic acid with which viruses replicate themselves. Once it's isolated and cleaned up, we can target specific targets. In this case, of course, we're looking for SARS-CoV-2. And we use a system called Droplet Digital Polymerase Chain Reaction, or ddPCR. And that allows us to get a quantified number of those RNA copies in our original sample. These reports are generated for our Monday samples, usually delivered each Wednesday morning. And then for the one Thursday sample, Influent goes out on Friday morning, since it's a significantly less amount of analysis work. Each of these reports consists of a letter with the number of positive sites, some trend information, especially for our citywide Influent, and any explanatory narrative that might be necessary. We also provide all of the calculated results, raw data, and the chains of custody to the city and the health department. These go directly to Art, as well as Russell Carter at the health department. And then through MyNet, it goes to MDHHS and on to CDC for the citywide influence sample. And EGLE maintains a couple dashboards that I'll talk about in a little bit. So we report these data to them as well. And then there's a lot going on in this figure. This gives kind of the broadest overview of the data that we've collected since July of 2021. On the left in blue, we have our wastewater results. And so that's the line at the top of the graphic. And then that's overlaid with the actual case counts verified through Public Health Department and MDHHS with the orange bar graphs on the right. What we see, a couple of notable aspects of this, is that we expect to see a similar shape to both of these results, which we see pretty consistently well into 2022. However, you'll notice that in 2022, we start to see a lot fewer detections at the individual case counts, and that's primarily, we think, due to home testing and a lack of organized reporting being reported to MDHHS. So we see an uncoupling, and even though the shape is still very similar, we know that we have good data coming in from the wastewater, even if we can't necessarily look at the verified case counts. Our variants of concern are marked. When we started testing in July of 21, Delta was already dominant. It was by far the most common variant. And we see that huge Omicron surge that we remember in late winter. We saw that in case counts and in the wastewater. And then since then, it's really been a succession of Omicron subvariants. At this point, we are primarily seeing, or almost entirely seeing, XBB. That's at the local, state, and national levels. The last testing we did for variants was 100% signature of XBB. And then that circle there is just highlighting the 2023 data. What we're seeing is a pretty significant and noticeable decline in the amount of COVID-19 throughout the town in all of our samples. And then this heat map shows each of the sites that we actually sample at on the left and the sampling date across the top. Starts with January of this year and goes through May 25th is the most recent sample I have on here. Each of the small dots is a non-detection. It means we did not find COVID in that sample. And then the larger squares were positive hits. The darker the red, the higher the level of COVID-19. And we're seeing a noticeable decline in the number of detections over the course of the winter and into the summer. Now, this is something that we saw last year as well, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay that way into the fall and holiday season. But very noticeable is that influence sample right in the middle that we take twice a week. Seeing non-detections in that sample is especially encouraging, as we've seen periodic, maybe one here, one there, but having 3 in the last couple months, I think is a solid indicator that we're seeing overall declining levels. And then overall, the amount in those positive samples, we're seeing those lighter yellows and less COVID-19. That last thing, the last question that we ask of these samples are for variant detections. This is using PCR kits. We started this in April of 2022, and at this point, Omicron was dominant. So these different kits are looking for specific combinations of mutations to tell us what variants are present in the sample. The numbers along those pie wedges show how many samples contain those signatures. We can see in May through summer of 2022, we have BA1, BA2 transitioning into 4.5, and then over the winter, we start to see BQ1 crop up. And then notably, over this late winter and spring season, XBB has become dominant throughout the area. The link at the bottom there is the CDC COVID variant tracker, which shows all of the proportions of the variants at a regional and national level, and is a very useful tool to see how the city of Traverse City is tracking compared to nationwide trends. And then that brings me to some of the public dashboards that are available. There are two that are maintained by Eagle. The first is the general Michigan COVID-19 wastewater testing dashboard. I have the Munson site selected here. It shows how many samples have been collected since the pilot project in 2020, how many of those were positive, and then the line graph shows the specific results for the gene copies that we found in that sample over time. And then they also maintain
Could you back up one more?
Oh, yes.
The dark green, I guess they're green, the dark green line is what?
So on the line graph itself, there's actually two lines that are quite close to each other. We are looking at two different targets in COVID-19. They're basically locations in the genome called N1 and N2. This is really just redundancy. We expect them to be very similar because we would expect similar amounts of both of these. They're just two different locations on the spike protein of the virus. The gray line underneath is our limit of detection. That does vary with every sample we take, depending on how concentrated we make it. So we want to also report that so we can see whether or not it was a detection or not. And then when we report results, generally the number that you see is an average of the N1 and N2. The sweep dashboard is specifically looking at wastewater treatment plants in the state. So we have our regional wastewater treatment plant. This takes into account population as well as the flow that is flowing through the influent at the plant. And they calculate 15-day trends to help public health officials understand kind of what direction things are heading at these broader population levels, like full community levels, rather than the small sewer sheds. And then CDC also maintains the National Wastewater Surveillance System, or NEWS. I will say Michigan was instrumental in getting a lot of these projects off the ground. It was one of the first states that had a monitoring program in place in 2020. And since then, it's proliferated across the country. You can see kind of the density of sites that are now being reported on. So this is definitely part of a larger state and national effort to monitor COVID. And then I've got the influent highlighted there for Traverse City on the right, and you can see how they report their data. Looking forward, we have funding secured through September of this year, but we did just hear from CDC and MDHHS that they're committing to additional funding through summer of next year, July of 2024. We don't know exactly what that'll look like, if it'll be the exact same protocol moving forward, but we do expect that to be finalized in the coming months. And there was a meeting here at MSU, the Go With The Flow Wastewater Epidemiology Conference, that was hosted by MINET, where the main takeaway that we talked about was collaborating and making sure all of these different stakeholders and partners were getting their questions answered, that the data was being used in ways that were most helpful for our officials, and real strong emphasis on communication. So I think it's really important, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk with you tonight directly and answer your questions so this data is most helpful. It's a lot of technical information, and I can certainly go on, but I welcome any reaching out. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to talk to you about this more. My contact information is up there, and then we have the full sewer project team at GLEC, including Natalie Smith, Julianne Heinlein, and Taylor West. And in the meantime, I'd be happy to take any further questions this evening. Thank you.
This probably isn't your area of expertise, but do you know if the most recent vaccine is geared toward this XBB variant?
I don't know specifically. It wouldn't be something I could speak
Yep.
on confidently.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Will we be expecting an update, sometime again next year to figure out how all this is flowing through, or?
We can certainly update as regularly as you'd like to receive those.
I think about this time again next year, put it on somebody's calendar and say, what's changed?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, we
absolutely.
don't need to go back, but what's changed in the next year, especially when you get the new guidelines?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many variants have we got now? About 6 we've been through?
Yeah, the variants of concern, we're at least 6 to 8, and there are numerous other variants that never really took off or made a public health impact. But yeah, the amount of different mutations out there is pretty wild.
Okay. Well, thank you for your efforts, and thank you to Jacobs and everybody else for helping out. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone up here?
No questions, just thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We voted on it when it was made available, and it's interesting to see how the data collected,
Yeah.
and continuing to see the updates of how that works. And so it's interesting to hear it more in detail of how you do it, since we kind of approved it in general in the past, so thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad it's
The only
helpful to hear
maybe
this.
next year, though, is when you come in, is that you've got your national average. How do we rank with the national average? We're running in the same scale, or are we below them, or?
Generally, we tend to track pretty well. If anything,
I don't know if I like that answer or not. I'd rather be tracking below them.
it's more an issue of timing. It tends to take longer for both spikes to get up here
Okay.
and for variants of concern to become dominant up
Okay.
here. So it's kind of making its way up the peninsula. Certainly, we see that trend in the state level. It's a little harder to pick that out at the national level, but we tend to catch up eventually.
Okay, so what you're saying is this national could be going up here, and we're going to track a little bit further behind them.
Yeah, and that's
But
not
the same level.
universal, but yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you. So that means we don't need to have as many visitors, coming up.
Yeah, when we invite the whole world here, which
Yeah,
is
well,
good,
okay.
they bring everything with them.
Yeah, they bring it with them, okay. And that's wonderful. Okay, next we have a consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing a claim for the Protecting Michigan Pension Grant. Who's going to?
It's me.
You're going to lead this?
That's me.
Okay.
So appreciate it, Mayor and Commission, to be on the agenda tonight. This was kind of a last-minute ad. I want to say thanks to Tony Mangini over at MML, who called me late last week and said, hey, where are you guys at on this? Because we were one of the communities they had not talked to yet. One of the things we found that we needed to get before you, before we provide our application, which is due next week, is this resolution that authorizes us to request these dollars. Although the city was not extremely far behind some of our other peer communities as far as the 60% funding, we weren't all the way there, and it kind of seems not like a good idea just to leave money on the table. So we are asking for your authorization to allow us to apply for the Protecting Pensions Grant. We are estimating, based on our calculations and based on the information from the state, this would mean just over $86,000 that we could put towards our unfunded liability on, I call it the general employee side. I think there's a different acronym for it, but basically your non-PA 345, is that the right?
Non-public safety.
Not non-public safety, that's a simpler way to say it. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yes.
It sounds fine, and so I scanned it earlier for strings attached, and there is in the whereas qualified units with qualified retirement systems shall comply with grant award requirements. So what are the grant award requirements? Like, what are those strings attached that we have to do either just to get the money, or my concern is strings attached in future years.
I do not have that answer.
Okay.
Is it,
Like, I'm good with jumping through a hoop this week, next month, but to bind the hands of future commissions that says, like, maybe it says it shall never go below 60% or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a key thing
Yeah.
to know.
and just out of curiosity, was this resolution, piggybacking on that, was this resolution put forth by MML then, or was that something Lauren helped construct?
No, this is the standard
Okay.
off their website.
What,
And
the
that was
state's
where I was
website.
curious, is that that's where I was kind of curious, is it boilerplate, like that's in there, maybe there isn't anything, and it's just something they put in every resolution?
Right.
Or does it, that's Tim's point, is it gonna bind our hands down the road in a way we don't wanna be?
Yeah, I apologize. I should have had that information in here. I guess I would ask if there is a motion to support this, perhaps with some qualifiers that, I don't know how you would define those to where the commission would be comfortable. I mean, I have in my mind probably some of the things that you would not be comfortable with if we have to, say, close the pension system or something along those lines. If there's some guidelines that you can give Lauren and I and Ben, that if it crosses a certain threshold, I'll see what I can find what you all are considering.
Can I
And
ask?
typically, a grant agreement comes back to this.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Doesn't it come back for,
Yeah.
like, then we have to accept the grant?
Yeah.
So if there's something just
Oh,
mind-blowing in
yeah, all
there,
we're
we
doing
can
is
just say, no,
putting
we
in
don't
the
accept.
application. If
Yeah.
it comes back and we know what in that
Right.
application
We'll know
comes
what it
back, say, please
Yeah.
do that. We look at the strings and we could say, okay, thank you, but no, thank you. All right,
Sounds good.
all right. Just know that when that comes back, we're going to be wanting to look at that in a.
No, I can certainly appreciate that.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
make the motion that the resolution authorizing a claim for the Protecting Michigan Pension Grant be adopted.
Support.
Give that to Linda.
What?
I said it at the same time when I was sitting
Oh,
next to him, so I
sorry.
wanted to make sure you said it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to excuse myself. I'll turn this over to you.
Final public comment too,
Yes.
Thanks
I
for
don't think you're going to
noticing
see a whole lot of
I don't
public
think so
comment.
either, that's why I wanted to
If
make sure.
either one of those three say anything,
We're in trouble.
what are you laughing about?
All right, everyone. Oh, just can't get him off the stage here. Okay, so our item number 3 is the findings of the ad hoc committee that we charged with going through or groups and people who applied to help us with our city manager search. Ms. Stanley, you are the chair of that. If you'd like to run through that for us.
Certainly, we had asked Ms. Bosley, the Human Resources Director, to provide us with some of her input and expertise on evaluating the 12 proposals that were received. And we had a discussion with her, I believe it was last Wednesday. And going through that, we were pretty quickly able to winnow down to a smaller handful of firms that we were interested in having come before this body for further consideration and evaluation of those proposals. And so you have that, those 3 packets are included here. Oh, sorry. So those would be the Amy Sell, the HR Gov USA, and Walsh Consulting.
Okay, and so at this point, I guess I would open up to fellow commissioners of, based on what we have here in the packet, on the 3 different firms that were selected, did you first, and we'll do it as a combo, do you have any further questions for the committee that looked at these, for any details that you feel like you didn't see in here, or reasoning, and or did anybody have any initial thoughts based on what they found in the packet? Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'm supportive of what the ad hoc has brought forward, but I did have a question about any thoughts members of the ad hoc are willing to share regarding the Walsh Group, just because it much smaller entity and more specific to Michigan, and maybe that's the reason, is something different.
Anybody?
Buddy?
Present to the future.
I think I would feel comfortable saying that at one point we were looking at potentially only bringing 2 forward, and so when we were broadening it to 3, that's where Walsh percolated to the top there.
Okay,
So
great, thanks.
Yep, Mitch?
Yeah, just if, you don't need to go through the whole process, but what criteria or qualifications helped you narrow it down? Were you looking at timeline or competency?
So I think we were looking at the specificity of their proposal for what was being considered, their staffing proposal, their experience with Michigan as a place for placing executive level leadership, but also having a reach beyond that for their recruitment pool.
Ms. Bosley had put together a rubric for us, including overall industry experience, municipal experience, examples of clients, recruiter team experience, cost, quality of submission, unsuccessful search termination clause, proposed timeline, reach a network of candidates, and a few other things. So she had put together a fairly,
Well, good for her.
fairly comprehensive chart for us.
That's great.
And it made it easy to eliminate 6, and from the remaining, we chose 3.
Any other questions or reflections from the commissioners right now? Well, I would say thank you for bringing us these 3. To Commissioner Warner's point, one does seem to be kind of more Michigan focused, but I appreciated hearing from you all that part of the reason why that was part of the rubric that we looked at is Michigan obviously has its own set of rules that anybody we want coming in would at least understand, whether they're worked here or from here, but that could be specified in the search. And, for example, that we are a city manager-centered form of government, et cetera. So, I appreciate there being 3. Is everybody, I guess we'll start with, is everybody comfortable inviting 3 for an interview? Or does somebody have one they'd like to strike off for some reason?
3 seems like a good number to me.
Excellent.
And I definitely appreciate 3 as opposed to 12.
Definitely, I agree with you completely on that one, Mitch.
So thank you to the ad hoc and to our HR department for narrowing it down.
Absolutely. I'll either take any more questions or comments, or I'd take a motion as recommended in the packet. I can't make it this time, guys.
I'll make a motion that the board approves the 3 recommended executive search firms and invite the 3 firms to present to City Commission at the June 19 City Commission meeting.
Support.
A motion of support. Any further comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, before we go into closed session.
I heard you.
I heard everybody. Before we go into closed session, is there any final public comment? Seeing none, is there any comment from the commission here? Go ahead.
Just an awareness to share, and I already shared it with the city manager, but if anybody, any of my colleagues ride a bike, know people that ride bikes, I would encourage you to go take a look at State Street, the eastbound bike lane at the Cass Street intersection. Has been modified in such a way that essentially there's a missing portion of the bike lane, which is fine for people like myself, but I have seen many families using that bike lane over the years, and it's not fine for all users. So just my opinion, and encouraging others to take a look.
Good public service. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware that the Planning Commission had a meeting last week that was contentious, to say the least, and they are bringing up to us on July 17th a very complicated matter. And I wanted, for those of you who have the time, if you haven't read Missing Middle Housing by Dan Perolik, it's what started this in about 2020 when the Planning Commission all read that book, and we're all on board for proposals put forth in that book. It might help you have a baseline for, you're going to have to run fast to catch up with what's been percolating there for a number of years. So that might be a good place for you to start.
Thank you.
And I am glad for all of your sake that we do have over a month before that meeting, because there have been a lot of discussions about it that you could catch up on. There's been time to read the draft proposals themselves, and I feel like I've gotten hundreds of emails and phone calls and citizen comments about these proposed changes.
And rest assured to people, we've also been getting with the City Commission general email, and we are getting those and we are reading those. So appreciate the work that the Planning Commission has done to this point, and I know that you all have had both the public comment and emails for longer. People do email us, we want you to know that we do get those and we do read those. I will just close with a quick kudos, I guess. Mayor Lewis, who is not here right now, our city attorney, Lauren Tribble-Out, and our city clerk, Ben Marentet, all participated in the first annual Loop the Lake this year, which is the first race that they've coordinated through the Traverse City Track Club at the now completed loop that I think we're all still very excited about from last year. And so I just volunteered and gave them burritos, but they all actually participated. So I just wanted to give kudos to them for participating in a great community event there. So with that, if there is nothing further, so I thought I had a question about procedure, but I think we're good. Okay, we are not anticipated to take action, correct?
Correct.
Or are we? Okay.
Closed sessions?
Right.
After closed
No,
session.
no
So we will be back to close the meeting, but there is no anticipated action to be taken at that time. So everyone, unless you want to hang out and watch the hold screen, we wish you a wonderful evening. Adjourned, I don't have the hammer. There we go, thank you.
No, you see that pile of notepads over there? I went home and found all the notepads.
Did you think like Tim that they're free?
Brought them back.
Yeah, you're supposed to keep, they are so useful.
Tim made it through
Told
COVID.
we're supposed to return them.
Tim was taking them home, and when COVID hit, he was ready to go.
For like 6 years. think. Was it good? Weekend? Good? It was good.
Is that my seat?
Waiting for summer to come back.
I think I'm gonna follow that thing.
Gloves and hand warmers.
Oh, jeez.
See, if I sit down, I'll make y'all
Turned the
stay.
heat on
That's
back
all right.
on in our
Nope.
house yesterday.
Wait, should we sing you happy birthday if you sit down?
Yeah.
If you don't
Go
sit
ahead.
down?
Put on a sweater.
Like,
You don't want to hear that.
I don't care.
turn the heat
It
on.
doesn't bother me any. I've been through a lot, so it is. All
Well,
right.
their heat will get
Anybody
to us
have
in a
any
couple
other
days.
questions for the night? This meeting is hereby adjourned.
Happy birthday, Mayor Liz.
Thank you.
It's your birthday?
Tomorrow. Tomorrow, I hit the big 7-0.
Yeah.
Someone,
Wow.
that's important.
You're getting close to retirement age.
Yeah, but that's why you should have a
Are you
party.
done in Elk Rapids?
Huh?
Are you done in Elk Rapids?
No.
Yeah.
On the 20th, they should be having.